Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Bullets and Bourbon. I'm Matt Gunlock, and I'm joined with Tes Salb. Now, we've already spoken to Tes Salb, so we're not going to give this grand introduction, but this episode we're going to be talking more about injuries and recovery and mindset and shifting directions in the sports we compete in. So I'm just going to kind of go ahead and get started. So, in the last episode we spoke about, which was mostly about marksmanship in the industry, we touched a little on the fitness side. But how has fitness played a role in your ability to perform at the highest level?
Hey Matt. So, um, yeah, the fitness has played a significant role in my life and my ability to perform. I grew up dancing and had a pretty active family. So whenever I got into the sport of shooting, and I was already active through horseback riding, I was dancing 5 or 6 hours a week, and this is when I was 12 years old. So I got into the sport of modern pentathlon, and that introduced me to the five different sports, which is running, swimming, shooting, fencing, and horseback riding. So from there, you know, I've always had fitness as a background, and then turned it into a sport with goals as well. So I would say for me, fitness has really played a significant role because it's been the foundation from which I've been able to stem off and do so many different things, such as pentathlon, adventure racing, tactical games, and just competitive shooting as a whole.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't say did fitness at a high level before the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps was more just maintaining and I don't want to say optimum performance, but just being able to perform at a level every single day. Um, because I think, athletes try to get that peak performance for that one event, whereas like in the military, you have to be able to consistently do the same thing over and over. But, I think, we kind of talked about this before we even got started, but life is a constant workout. Life is fitness, if you take it seriously, and it's just a matter of trying to survive each day at a time, especially as you get older. Like you said it
Absolutely.
yourself, you had a friend that fell down or something, and then next thing you know, he tore his quad.
Well,
It's like,
he was just walking downstairs and
yeah.
popped his quad. So, life definitely is a sport. I feel the older you get, it becomes more of a sport.
Yes.
However, fitness gives you that functional foundation because I think the ultimate goal for everybody, regardless of what you try to attain in life, or what your reasons are for being in sport or for being in the shooting sports or for carrying for personal defense or whatever your purpose is, having that foundation of and allowing yourself to be functional
Hmm.
is very important. Being able to move, being able to respond to stimulus, and also being able to um, kind of just do what life comes at you.
Well, I think it's
Do it.
also a level of self-awareness. Like you don't know what situations you're going to be put in. So you have to have a certain level of self-awareness of what your capabilities are, whether it's behind a gun or it's, in the fitness realm. Because if you've never done something and now you're put in a situation where you have to, and there's just that question in your mind of, am I going to be able to perform this action? So it's just, having a high level of fitness, you have that ability to know your body and what its capabilities are to perform pretty much
Absolutely.
anything that is thrown in front of you.
Yes, that's very true. Understanding where your body is in time and space and how it performs in certain functions in time and space is very important for your abilities to react. As a personal trainer for years, most people are really good, but every now and then I would get somebody who walked in there and they would have no idea what the right arm was doing in relation to the left as an adult. And I'm thinking, my goodness, we need to fix this because
It's kind of like me trying to do double unders. I try to get the movement, but it just does not want to work right now.
right, right. So fitness is, I feel like it's played a huge part in my life, but also I feel like it's a huge part for anybody's life. Um, and the ability to function and respond, kind
Hmm.
of as we both said. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, has the way you trained in the gym changed or evolved over the years, and what constituted the change, if any at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I Fitness and sports are never linear.
Hmm.
It's more of like peaks and valleys. So whenever I was first before I started pentathlon, I would say I was enjoying dance. I was functional. I was aware of my body and time and space, and I wasn't strong, I wasn't fast, but I could respond better, I could react better. Whenever I started getting into sport, my the training was more focused on specific goals, and within
Hmm.
those goals there were times of recovery and times of true hard training, times of competition. The way that I would train out of season was not how I would train when I was trying to reach a specific goal, because every year I would put one major event on my calendar is like, this is where I want to peak. This is where I want the ultimate performance for my body to be at this time. And so within there, I would have A events, which were secondary events, B events, which were more training events, and C events, which were events where I would try to recover, but I would also try new gear. I would try new nutrition. I would try new things, but I was still doing it in the competitive shoot or in the competitive arena, not necessarily shooting, but um for CrossFit, for pentathlon, for triathlons, for all the sports that I've done. So over the years, it's been very peaks and valleys. But I was also doing a lot more heart rate training type stuff. Whereas nowadays, as I've gotten older, my training has evolved to more of a trying to maintain a specific base at a
Hmm.
specific level. So I kind of what you and I talked about previously, about I've moved more to a rate of perceived exertion. So if my workout is based on how I'm feeling that day. So if the workout is supposed to be at a rate of perceived exertion level between 3 and 5, that 3 and 5 today might be different than yesterday versus tomorrow. So I'm listening to my body a lot more. I'm trying to focus a lot more on what's moving well, what's not moving so well, and what I need to pay attention to. So it has become different, but then also what I'll do is instead of trying to stay at a peak level at such a long period of time throughout the year, I'll ramp it up a couple months before each event and then really taper back. So my taper months or my recovery months might be a little bit longer, or my time periods might be a little bit longer, just to kind of tweak things, just to maintain that base, as opposed to trying to stay at a higher level of performance for longer periods of time. I think as we age, that's becoming more important so we don't break.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I remember, going back to whenever I was like 17 years old, like, younger years, I played hockey. I had a very strong base, lower body wise, but I would say upper body wise, I didn't have any muscle. I was 130 pounds wet, back 16, 17 years old. And, coincidentally, my brother ripped his spleen in half while we were skating, ended up in the emergency room.
Oh
Doctor
wow.
saved his life. And so I spent the entire week at the hospital, and I picked up a magazine called Muscle Media. And these were like early years, 1998, 1999, 2000 era magazines. And it was nothing but like trying to promote a certain brand and product and everything. But it was great because it got me into the gym. And, when I first started working out, it was all I had the original Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding from Arnold Schwarzenegger, so that's where my
I was
fitness
to say
evolved.
Arnold was everybody's idol, everybody's
Yes,
mentor.
yes, he absolutely was. But I loved the bodybuilding style of workout back then, and it kind of that's kind of where I stayed for a very long period of time. And then I kind of evolved into, well, I'm just going to do dumbbell work and work stabilizer muscles. And now it's like, and then I'd say the latter half of my career in the Marine Corps, it was like, I just want to do functional fitness, like bodybuilding workouts. I don't feel that they really accomplish anything fitness wise, like with what we do. Whereas like functional fitness, CrossFit, HIIT, all those things, like those are preparing you for real life, and they're keeping you moving in many cases.
I would agree and I would not at to that point. Um, because being functional is being able to have all of your systems functioning properly.
Hmm.
And a lot of the functional fitness programs these days are very linear, meaning you only work one plane,
Hmm.
forward or backwards. You're not training all systems in all directions. And so I truly believe that yes, while functional fitness is very important and it definitely is very good. There is a place for everything else because if you only your major muscles are working and you're not allowing the other muscles or you're not training the other muscles and the other planes in your body, you're gonna end up injured.
Okay.
And that's kind of the thing. It's kind of that's where overuse injuries come in. That's where a lot of the other problems come in, which is kind of where I found myself this time, was that I was not doing all the planes that I should have been doing. I had warning signals, I had warning signs, and I ignored them.
Mm.
And so I understand what you're saying, and I agree to a point, but and as a personal trainer, I've known this for a long time, but as you know, as everybody knows, it's easier to give your own advice than to take your own advice. And so I just kept saying, I'll push one more time. I'll push one more time, right? Because
Yes.
the systems had not failed me yet.
Yeah. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And yeah.
Absolutely. And so I would agree with you, as in, if you find a program that works to get you towards your goals, use it, but don't ignore everything else because those little things and the things that we think are simple and not important are actually the most important things.
So kind of shifting some going into, training regimens. I know your training has changed since then, but when you were participating heavily in the tactical games, what did your typical training regimen look like?
So I was pretty much working out twice a day. I would do cardio in the mornings, and then I was doing CrossFit in the evenings, and then I would do accessory work. But my accessory work was based around movements that we were doing in the tactical games, not movements that would serve my body.
Right.
And so what I was doing is pretty much, yes, I was doing all of the major muscle groups. I was getting stronger. Um, in the areas that needed to be strong, but at the same time as those were taking over, my weaker areas were becoming even more weaker. And so I started to see signs. I started to see a breakdown of my body, and I would start working with different people outside of my gym who were much more knowledgeable in the strength and conditioning of like training professional athletes, right? So the professional athletes don't just work one plane, right? We've
Hmm.
never seen a football player that just says, sorry, coach, I only run forwards. I can't run right. I can't run left. I just run forward. That's what I'm really good at. They wouldn't be hired.
Right.
So I hired the guys that do those things, but because they couldn't see me and they couldn't look at me, they didn't kind of break that down. So I was doing what a lot of other athletes do. I found a program that worked for me. I had a goal in mind and I was on a time schedule. I didn't have time to do the things that I should have been doing for my body. So I was focused, I was going hard, and I was kind of yeah, I was doing the thing. I was
You
doing
weren't listening to your body in the other way.
Well, I was doing what I needed to do to perform in the sport.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that. I kind of look at it as, you know, I watch a lot of the CrossFit athletes, I watch their YouTube videos and stuff like that and just kind of see how they move and what they do. And it's like, they're not just doing CrossFit, they're doing bodybuilding type stuff. They're building strength. They're doing powerlifting stuff. They're like hitting all the wickets, and they may not be the best in one focused area, but they're good in all the other areas as well.
Yes. Yeah. No, professional athletes are, when you get to a certain level, you're not just doing the things that you see on Instagram. They're
Yeah,
not showing you them standing on one leg, balancing, or standing in a split squat, lifting, doing unilateral raises or all the unilateral work that they're doing, because that's not, it very much applies to their sport, but it doesn't apply to the audience, if that makes sense.
yeah, no,
Like a
absolutely.
lot of a lot of the stuff that allows them to stay in the sport is not the stuff
Get
that the
seen.
sport is about. Exactly.
Yeah. So, um, kind of going into the injuries, and we kind of talked about this some before, and I know you're going to bring it up, but that, since I've known you, I knew you for one major injury recently, and it was in August of 2023, and that was at the Tactical Games team event. So, kind of if you could break down both of those injuries that you've had, what happened that caused it, what was your treatment plan like, and then how did recovery go?
So yeah, I have had two major injuries in my athletic career. The first one was in 2005. I had just come off of Ironman USA and was starting to train for my first off-road Ironman. And my first day of training, I fell off a bridge mountain biking and blew my knee out completely. So MCL, ACL, meniscus. Yeah. And then the fast forward to 2023, we were in the team event and we were finishing a ruck, and it was the first event of the whole thing. And I stepped across the finish line and caught my left toe on a tuft of grass. And mind you, we had a ruck and all of our gear on, so it was
Hmm.
a hefty amount of weight added to us. And the mountains or the hills of West Virginia are not,
They're not kind.
they're not kind. And I no longer live in Virginia. I am now a flatlander, and flatlanders don't have glutes to climb the said hills. So
No.
I had a lot working against me. Plus, I had not been working out as hard as I had been before, just to things going on in life. And so I step across the finish line and twist my left toe, caught my left toe, twisted my left ankle, went to catch myself with my right foot, and also twisted that one as well. But when I did that one, I heard a pop. And there's a difference between, it was the same pop I had heard when I blew my knee out in 2005. So I knew right away I was severely injured. I just didn't know if it was a break or a ligament.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, so the injury ended up being in 2023. I ended up having three-quarter tears in my left ankle, my ATFL, and another ligament on that one. And then on my right ankle, I had full tears in my front and rear post ligaments of the leg with an avulsion, which is where the ligament pulls from the bone. So there's bone. It's not a break, but it's a breakdown of the bone where the
Right.
ligament pulled off. So, anyways, was not sure exactly what happened. Also, was not sure exactly how injured I was. My head was saying you're really injured, but I could still half function. So we taped my ankles up and I kept going for the rest of the day. It was kind of that thought of not wanting to let my teammate down, but then also, um, how much more injured could I be?
Hmm.
Kind of that mentality of maybe I'm just making a bigger deal out of this than It really is. Um, but I actually made a much less deal out of it than it really was. So, the doctors were a little surprised that I was walking around when I finally saw them, that I walked in there on my own 2 feet. I was like, well, if you'd seen what I was doing before.
I th
So,
I think
anyways,
I think it's like a level of pain threshold that we have. Like the harder you work, and the more you do, it's you can deal with a lot more than what the average person can. Whereas if
yeah.
somebody's just stagnant, it's going to be the end of the world for them.
Right. Well, yeah, the next, I mean, we taped my ankles up pretty good. And the second event after the ruck was rope climbs. And that was kind of the point where I knew I was in a lot of pain. I could was struggling with a lot of things, but in the rope climb, the biggest thing for me was I could not flex my right foot to stand on it with the rope. And I kept looking down at my feet saying, why can't you do this? Why can't you function? And it was because I tore everything that's required to hold my foot up like that. So, um, yeah, I would definitely say that the pain threshold is it just kind of became the whole thing of, well, it's not getting worse. It's
Hmm.
awful, but it's not getting worse. So I can still start functioning. And adrenaline is an amazing thing for pain.
Yes. Yes.
When they say 3, 2, 1, go, I mean that.
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll go back to I recently did a gun run event and I think I fell 4 freaking times down, down an ice sheet and,
Right,
ripped my hand open, banged my knee up pretty bad and, mine's just saying just keep going and I took a pretty big gouge out of my hand and I knew something was up with the knee. I didn't know how bad it was and all in all it wasn't that bad. But it's like I get to the next stage and they see blood all down my hand, and like I'm
just a flesh
Cerakoting.
wound.
Yeah, I'm just Cerakoting my guns in blood and they're like, do you need to see a doctor or a medic? No, I'm good. I'm fine. And
Right,
it was. I mean, it was just a superficial flesh wound. Wasn't that big of a deal. But the thing that I didn't realize at the time because the adrenaline was the knee. The
right.
next day I didn't have full range of motion in my knee. I saw that it was inflamed. The day after that, both sides of my knee from like mid calf to like just above the knee was just all lightly bruised. I was like, okay, I did a little bit more than what I thought, and I just kind of kept monitoring it. And I could feel tightness and pain, but I was like, let's see what I am capable of. So I would go for a run, did like a 3 mile flat run. And, but I'm not going to do any jumping movements or anything that's going to really, I'm not going to do heavy squats or anything like that. And I'm fine, after a week and a half, it's like, okay, I have full range of motion. I have this going on. And, I kind of knew what my body was doing and I was listening to it. But yeah, I've also had the injuries on the opposite end, like with my shoulder or my back, where it's like, okay, I cannot do this and I need to get
Yeah.
checked out.
Well, yeah, and in the moment, I used to do adventure racing, and we had a rule that anytime you had a hard fall, anytime somebody fell off their bike, anytime anything, if you fell off a wall that you were climbing or something like that, anytime there was a major, anytime the rubber left the ground and you
Hmm.
were rubber side up instead of rubber side down, we had a rule to give yourself a 10 count
Hmm.
to allow that adrenaline to wear off because when you just pop back up and you keep going, you you can actually put yourself in a really difficult situation if you are more severely injured. And so
Hmm.
that was the one thing I would say is I have been really good about when I have an issue, if something happens that's not supposed to happen, fall off a wall at tactical games or something like that, to sit there and give yourself a 10 count, let the adrenaline wear off, let your, become a little bit more self-aware again, as opposed to looking at the external where the competition is, what's going on, thinking about the clock. Like right now, at that moment, the most important thing is to do a body assessment,
Hmm.
to truly determine whether or not you can move on. And so mine, I mean, I did mine at the finish line, so it's not like I had anywhere else to be real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the next event. So, but I mean, that's something, if anybody ever experiences anything in competition or just in life, if you step off a curb wrong and something pops and you find yourself on the ground, make sure you're safe, but give yourself a 10 count, do a body assessment, because that can actually really, um, help you in the long run and help you truly assess what you're truly capable and what you're not capable of. The one thing that did confuse me after I did both of my ankles at the same time, um, was that there was extreme pain, but I was still able to be mobile. So it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of a weird thing, which is why I continued on as opposed to with my knee. I knew that was
A
I
little bit
could
more
not bend my
significant than what it was.
I could not bend my leg. I could not stand on my leg. And I still had to bike back to the parking lot, which was about 2 miles.
Oof.
So yeah, so that was a little bit different. I knew I was done. My ankles, because I'd never sprained my ankle before, I seriously thought I just had severely sprained them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this is what an ankle sprain feels like. So that's one reason why I kept going. So, I mean, you live and you learn, right? Like, oh, so that's not what it feels like. That was the extreme version of an ankle sprain. So, um, I mean, even, everybody was just like, you did both. I'm like, yeah, because that doesn't
It's not
happen
normal.
often at the same time. Well, trust me, there are days I still wake up and I'm like, how did that happen? And I jumped to that whole effect of, okay, the bigger question is the universe literally knocked me down. What was it trying to tell me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the lesson to be learned, or what was the message there? Because yeah. So anyway, both for my knee and for my ankles, I did have to have surgery. My knee surgery was much different than my ankle surgery. In my ankle surgery, they only did one. They did the more severe ankle with the hopes that once I got up and moving on the right ankle, that the left one would begin to strengthen and heal and we wouldn't have to do surgery. But as of right now, it's still not off the table.
Mm.
Yeah. So, but with my knee, they wanted me up and walking within 2 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then I was in physical therapy immediately after. With my ankle, I was in a hard cast for 6 weeks. And then I was in a boot for another 8 weeks after that. So they were both significant injuries, but there were like the actual treatment, and how surgery went and what was expected afterwards was a lot different. And now, granted, I will say I did not have surgery right away on either one of my injuries. With my knee surgery, my doctor recommended that because it was such a severe injury that we allow the inflammation to go down because I had an allograft, which is a cadaver tendon.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to use my own muscles because my thought was, well, if I want to keep doing sports and I blow it out again, I only have two hamstrings you can use, two patella tendon, right? So I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna use an allograft first. Um, so he wanted all the inflammation to go down, before he did surgery to make sure that my body had healed as much as it could on its own. And then on my ankles, to be honest with you, I came home from that trip and had some life things to tend to, but um also was seeing a physical therapist just for like she's a performance physical therapist and we literally just thought I had sprained my ankles. So we started doing a lot of like soft tissue manipulation, cupping, massage, just trying to get the mobility back and she kept testing and stuff and finally one day that's when I said I think I need to go see a doctor. So between August and I think I saw a doctor in October, November, maybe. And then I ended up scheduling my surgery for February. And a lot of that had to do with other things going on in my life at that point, but because I was like, well, I'm functional, right? I'm not working out, I'm not competing right now. Um, but it also allowed my ankles to heal and also allowed me to kind of break up some of the scar tissue and stuff before we went into surgery. So yeah, so that was what the treatment was like. Um, and as far as recovery, I think I mentioned to you earlier that to me, when I relied on what I did for my knee a lot for my ankle surgery, is I had to really think about what did I do in this time period, as soon as the injury occurred, I couldn't get back to the gym. I couldn't do all the recovery stuff that I would do because even walking was hard. So, getting back into the gym, doing the things I tried. I bought these massive ankle braces from Amazon and I wore high tops and I did all the things to try to stabilize my ankles. And every day I'd go in there and I would find something else that I couldn't do, like rowing was one thing. I'm like, oh, I can do that, but not when you have everything torn in your ankle. It's a lot more difficult than you think. I couldn't run. I couldn't do a lot of things. And so the recovery was a little bit different. After surgery, it was a lot of physical therapy, which I had a great physical therapist here in Dallas. And I went to a sports medicine doctor, which I would always recommend. If anybody out there gets injured, I would say go see a sports medicine doctor because my experience with them is that they aren't necessarily there to tell you to stop doing what you were doing. They're there to say, how can we get you back on your feet? Because that was the first thing I asked my doctor when he told me I had to have surgery. I said, what will I be able to do after this? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I'd like to get back to what I was doing. And he was like, okay, it'll just take some time. And he goes, but I mean, he fully expects to see me back out there doing what I was doing before, running half marathons, doing all the
Mhm.
things that I want to do that I haven't done yet. And there are a lot of non-sports medicine doctors who also have that thought process. But, anyways, so their goal, as soon as I had my surgery, my doctor and my physical therapist goals were to help get me back on my my feet, doing the things that I was doing before.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was the whole goal for that in physical recovery. I think when people have severe injuries, though, the one of the biggest things that you need to recover is your mental, um, your mental ability to think about, to process the injury, to process where you are, to process where you were, and to process where you're going. And I know that that is something that both through both injuries, I have actually taken a step back and said, okay, I can't physically do these things right now, but I'm going to exercise my brain. And so I work to keep my brain busy because it's really easy. I mean, even just with you talking to you after, you slipped on the ice and, you know, knocked your knee several times really hard.
Mhm.
You're like, you have that moment of, I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to do.
Mhm.
And you just mentioned of like you have to take it day by day, but yet you've been in a really strict training regimen and you've been on this like high of PRs and everything that even an injury that doesn't require surgery can actually knock you out of your mental game because you're
Mhm.
kind of like, oh man, I don't know if I can do that. And every day
Yep.
it's a waking up to see, can I
Yep.
do this today? Can I do that? And do I push it too hard? Or, there's that fear of undoing the little bit of progress you've made as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think the mental game is where I really work on my recovery after a major injury. And even smaller injuries. I think taking a step back and taking smaller goals, if you don't have to have surgery, looking at it like the way you have, as in saying, okay, we're going to take a step back. We're going to have micro goals, and those micro goals are going to be smaller than they were before, right?
Yep.
We're going to see if I can do this. We're going to test the waters. We're going to see if I can do this, scale back. And if you can, and you wake up the next day and you're still feeling good, you're like, okay, that is a can do versus, waking up the next day being like, oh, I feel like I took two steps back. That is
Yep.
a maybe later.
Yep. And it's also not beating yourself up if you go in there and it's like, I feel like I can do this. but then you don't perform. It's like, all right, well, maybe I'm just not there yet. It's noting it, okay, I'm not ready to do that yet, but that doesn't mean I have to stop everything else. You can
Right.
still keep going. And, it, like you said, it's that mental game. It's that, it's that mindset of, not beating yourself up because you couldn't achieve what you want, what you set out to do right then and there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in my case for like for my knee surgery, I was in the gym every day. There was a lot I could do. Because I was on both of my feet. With my ankle surgery, I was in a hard cast. I was on a knee scooter. So I was actually limited as to kind of where I could go. I was limited as to a lot of the things that I could do. I had plans to go to the CrossFit gym and do some stuff there, but then I realized my gym has stairs. There's really no way to get into it. And yeah, I could have drugged my scooter over there and scooched my way up there and scooched my way down, and but at the time, that was very overwhelming to me mentally. And so
Hmm.
I kind of stuck with doing things in my apartment, doing things in my apartment gym. Um, and, I did focus on upper body as I could. I did, core work. I actually did several things, but the biggest thing for me was to put together a plan of how to keep my mind busy.
Hmm.
So I knew I couldn't be as physically active as I was before. So for me, the plan was to maintain some sort of physical activity on certain days. And I set up a Wednesday night core group. So a bunch of my friends would jump on Zoom with me and we would do abs for 30 minutes. Right? I would put together the
Damn.
program because and it wasn't like straight 30 minutes, but it was like, by the time we said hey to everybody and I explained the different movements and the scale movements, and then we would do it and I'd give them rest between and stuff. So, I put together a program. So I did that to help keep me accountable because
Hmm.
when I was in Virginia and I had injured my knee, I had a group of people to help keep me accountable. Here I didn't have that. So I had to create that. But it was something that was also manageable and something I knew I could do every day, regardless of how my ankle felt. Because that was the other thing too, is I mean, with ankle surgery, even though I was an active person and I was healthy, they were extremely concerned about blood clots. They were
Mm.
extremely concerned, so they literally only wanted me to have my ankle down for so long during the day, and that would include working out and that type of stuff. And so doing core work was something I could do. So that kind of touched on the physical aspect of it. But then I always try to figure out, okay, how am I mentally going to keep myself busy?
Hmm.
So I put together a list of tasks, and after my knee surgery, I focused a lot on work. I would do certain things that I wanted to do for work. And then also I remember I had never watched Sex in the City. And so I was like late to the game. I bought all the DVDs. This is back in DVD days.
Yep.
Bought all the DVDs and I binge watched Sex in the City because I was like, well, that's something I can look forward to. And it was something that I could totally grow out over, right? And it like I could just escape into like a fantasy land that I didn't have any responsibility to anything else. And so this time, when I knew it was going to be a longer haul, I was like, what can I do? So I took a business course this time. I did a mindset certification. I did, what else did I do? Yeah, I just kind of did stuff like that.
Self-improvement.
I did, absolutely. But it was something to where I still felt like I was getting something out of it to where, because I think some of the biggest things when people have major injuries, um, or even small ones that are long lasting, you
They get
know,
into this funk or depression where they feel like they can't do anything when all they have to do is pivot.
well, there's that, but also, being able to look at it and say, hey, I want to make sure if I am going to put a 6 week timeline on this, or, because my doctor has said 6 weeks in a hard cast. So I said, by the end of 6 weeks, I don't want to look back on that time and not have anything to show for it. So I truly looked around, and I'm a big believer in the fact that if you open your eyes and if you were open to receiving, that the universe will give you what you're seeking. And at the time I was seeking something to do. I was seeking self-improvement. And so the business course and the mindset course fell in my lap. And I literally just had to say yes. They were right there. They wouldn't have necessarily been something I would have done had I been on my feet still,
Hmm.
but I'm very glad I did them and I learned a lot about myself, as you were saying. So I feel like keeping yourself mentally busy is very good. Setting yourself goals, asking your doctor, saying, hey, how long am I going to be in a cast? And by the time you end up, you know, put a goal of like reading so many books or something or do something like that to kind of help you through that time period. But I really feel like that is what helped me through it. And that's really what I spent a lot of time doing was not just recovering um physically, I was recovering my heart because it can be heartbreaking to have something happen where you don't know what your future looks like,
Yeah.
you know?
Like,
And so,
uh,
I was mended my heart and I mended my head. And you know, that's an ongoing process still because I'm still not where I wish I could be. I'm getting better. Every day's better,
mhm.
but it is, when it comes to injuries and when it comes to things like this, I feel like everybody's journey is their own.
Yep.
So you can't measure your progress based on somebody else's. And that is also very hard if you know other people who have had this injury or a similar injury, you know, for them, especially because that was one of my friends is a physical therapist, and we kept looking at what my injury was and kind of what professional athletes have. And a lot of professional athletes, I mean, they had a similar injury to me, but they're out on the field playing football within a couple weeks after surgery, right? Like they don't have the
Hmm.
recovery time, but we looked into the procedures that they did versus the procedure that my doctor did. And the one my doctor did is not a quick fix.
Hmm.
It's not something that's going to have to be repaired again, and it's not something that's going to limit my bones range of motion. Um, he performed surgery that would last me
A lifetime.
lifetime, as
Yeah.
opposed to a lot of the athletes, you know, when we were kind of taking a look at like, well, what does this look like? Their recovery time is very quick because they essentially
They have to
um,
perform. Like they're
well, they
getting
have
a
to
big
perform.
paycheck. Like,
It's their job,
yeah.
exactly. And without them, the team is not the same. So there is just as much of a rush to get them on the field from their team and their coaches as it is from themselves. I think more so, whereas I'm like, well, if it's going to last me, you know, for the rest of my life and I don't have to do this again, I'm okay sitting out what's another 6 weeks compared
Hmm.
to hopefully I have another 40 years in life, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I also look at a level of fitness. Like if you weren't as fit as you are, and as you were then and now, how long would the recovery have actually taken? And I say that, I follow a group on YouTube, Buttery Brothers, and they're just really fun guys to watch, and they're in the CrossFit space. And one of the latest episodes that they release is one of the hosts, Mars, had a heart attack last year, and or he didn't have a heart attack last year. He found out he had a heart attack at some point in the recent past. Didn't even know it. And he was looking at his Whoop strap. And for those who don't know, like I wear a Whoop. Tess wears a Garmin, and it tracks all your body metrics and it tells you how recovered you are. And he just noticed he was either in the red or the yellow consistently, and very rarely in the green. And he was like, he was getting surgery on his nose. Like maybe I'm just not sleeping right, breathing right, all this other stuff, and just he was trying to figure it out. So then he went to a cardiologist, and they were like, "You have an irregular heartbeat." And that doctor found out at some point in time you had a heart attack. Um,
that's terrifying. But
oh,
thank goodness
absolutely.
for Whoop. I did wear Whoop for a little bit, and it is very good. And
Yeah.
then I switched to Garmin.
I guess the crux of it all is they found out at some point, I think in 2021, he had a heart attack. Um, and that's scary, but it's like it's his level of fitness that kind of kept him able to go, didn't affect him in a major fashion in that
Right.
sense. And then whenever he finally had the surgery that he needed to perform, he was back in the gym a week or two later, able to maybe not performing at that high speed, but he was actually able to continue working out.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well, I will say that that is very true. And for both of my surgeries, that's something that I did. I mean, I did ask before my knee surgery, I asked the doctor, I said, what can I do? And he said, well, you can do whatever you want to. I mean, you kind of screwed everything up anyway. It's like you can't do much more damage. So I literally was going to the gym. I mean, I wasn't squatting heavy or doing anything like that, but I was
mhm,
doing machines and I was biking for 45 minutes a day on the recumbent bike up till the night before surgery. And before my ankle surgery, I was back to doing CrossFit. I mean, I wasn't jumping. I was very careful on certain things. I would bike a lot more than row or run. But the other thing that but I did start running again just because I
mhm,
was curious. And right before surgery, I ran a mile time trial just to kind of see where I was because
mhm,
I was like, you know what? That's going to be my next measure. When I get back on my feet, that's going to be my next measure. When I know I'm back to that point, I know that I'm back to that level of fitness,
yeah.
right? Because I mean, I did lose a lot. This one, I would say was a lot harder for me than my knee surgery. So I might have eaten my feelings some days, a lot of
Yeah.
days, which also happens, but you know, within reason, as long as you understand where you are, and I'm not
Mhm.
making excuses for myself, but given being down for that long and like still coming back to recover, it's been a process, and I've had to come up with a new plan and everything. So yeah,
Well, I remember, years ago, we're going back over 20 years now. Now it's 19 years. 19 years ago, roughly around this time, I had shoulder surgery and I was younger.
that's tough.
Yeah, and you don't realize how important your shoulder is until you don't have one.
Yes.
Coincidentally, a year after that, I dislocated my collarbone from my sternum, and like that was like there's nothing they could do. They were like, it just has to heal in place, and so for a long period of time, I just couldn't do anything, and everything hurt. But after the shoulder surgery, about a month after the surgery occurred, I went to physical therapy, and I had a really good physical therapist, and she's like, you have 3 months of physical therapy. What is one goal you want to achieve? I was like, well, prior to surgery, I was able to do 20 pull-ups. I was like, I know it's going to take a while to get back up to that, but I get out of the Marine Corps in like 5 months. So, because I had surgery, they zeroed out my EAS date the day I got out of the Marine Corps, and I was like, well, now it's indefinite, and I want to get out at my original
Okay.
time.
That I would say would definitely be a mental thing to recover from
Yes. Yeah.
from surgery, yes.
And so she's like, what do you want to achieve? I was like, I want to be able to do at least 10 pull-ups by the end of the 3 months. And she's like, well, let's work at it. And so we worked at it. I was able to achieve that within 6 weeks. And I think
Yeah.
part of that had to do with I was fit before the surgery, and then I was extremely focused and very self-conscious with everything in physical therapy, and I wasn't trying to go overboard with it.
Yep.
And it allowed me to get out on time. And then, a year later, I decided to come back in the Marine Corps, but that's neither here nor there.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, but also, I mean, just not just even like the post surgery, kind of what you were talking about with the gentleman with the heart attack is, I mean, the older we get, the more important it is for us to be fit for surgery.
yeah,
I mean, it's just for life,
yeah,
and so fitness is something that I hope I can always do, and I do my fitness at LA Fitness sometimes because they have the sauna and they have a pool, and I swim a lot, so um. I was riding one of the bikes the other day, and it's a two story building, so all the cardio equipment's upstairs, and I can't tell you. I watched probably 5 or 6 70 something year old men walk in during the time that I was there, and every single one of them inspired me. And I just for every single one that walked in, I kept saying, I want to be like them. I want to, at 70 something, at 80 something years old, I want to be able to walk into a gym, a public gym, and lift
Yeah.
the weights and do the things and take the classes like these guys, because that truly is a measure of health.
Dedication and health. Yeah.
Well, of dedication, health, longevity.
Yeah.
There is just so much. You don't have to lift 500 pounds.
No.
You don't have to, um, you don't have to be like the people that you see on TV, because promise you, their careers are short-lived. They're going to be just like the rest of us, doing their
Mm-hmm.
45 minutes on the recumbent bike and,
Yep.
and lifting their 30-pound dumbbells again someday. Like they're not always going to be at that level. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of people, as we get older, kind of take for I feel have the wrong perspective, in that
Mm-hmm.
because they can't do what they used to do,
Yep.
they don't they discard fitness. And it's like, no, that's not the case. It's
You create your own mental barrier. It's like, we were talking like when I was 22 years old, I used to be able to run a 16:33 mile. And, most of my career, I was running between 20 and 21:30 minute, 3 miles. And it's like now, you know, I'm running a lot more, but it's a lot harder. And I'm averaging 24-minute 3 miles. And at first, it was really depressing. It's like, man, what the fuck happened?
yeah,
And I had to take a step back, look at everything. I was like, well, I have a lot more muscle mass. I'm a lot older. I'm things aren't getting any easier. But I am consistent in everything that I do day in, day out. So I'm actually at a good level of fitness and I can do a lot more and I'm stronger for it.
right. Well, and like we said before, life is a sport in itself.
Yeah.
Just living, even if you've never competed in anything in your life,
Mm-hmm.
life is a sport. I mean, and so I really truly think that every single person out there is worth stepping into a gym for themselves, because it just takes stepping off the curb one time wrong. It just
Yeah.
takes, like my friend walking down the stairs and his quad blew, and he's an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, is like it happens to people who are in fitness. But it can happen to people who aren't. But also, I mean, if you have surgery or if anything is coming up, you owe it to yourself um to go into that as the in the best shape possible, so that
Yeah.
whatever happens under anesthesia, you're giving your body the best fighting chance.
Yes.
I a lot of times, that's another thing that I've kind of done been I've been doing daily gratitude for my body, because it truly is. Bodies are amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for as much as I have beat mine up, it still shows up and does its best every single day.
Yeah.
And if we don't serve it back by moving it, even if it's yoga, even if it's stretching or meditation, just anything to serve your body, I feel is very important, because life is a sport. Then you add sports on top of that, and
Yeah.
it's peaks and valleys. You have a chance of being injured. Um, just things break down. As mileage adds up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also,
Important.
on a personal note, my father had two heart attacks before the age of 42. Yeah, and
Wow.
granted, high stress job, narcotics cop down in Miami in the 80s.
It's
He
crazy.
drank, he smoked, um, he did everything, and then also diet wasn't a huge thing back then, so we didn't know the stuff back then that we do now. So, you know, by the time he was 49 years old, he was in the grave. And so I look at things now, it's like, I kind of put different checkpoints in my life. It's like when I hit 36, I was like, I haven't had a heart attack. I'm doing good for myself. I
Yeah.
just turned 42.
Yep.
I was like, I still haven't had a heart attack. I'm doing pretty good for myself.
Right.
And it's like finding those things in life to where, because heart attacks are hereditary in my family. And it's like, I want to keep everything as consistent and as healthy as I can so I can be there for my daughter's life,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that's
Well,
what it comes down to. Like
and
it's not just
the scary thing is, I mean, heart attack. My dad had had a heart attack as well, and the scariest thing is when he had to have a quadruple bypass in 2020, and we were at Cleveland Clinic, and he asked. I was there when he asked the doctor. He said, what causes this? And the doctor literally said, we don't know.
hmm
And the guy said that he had had a 36-year-old Navy SEAL in there the day before for a quadruple bypass. A
hmm
Navy SEAL, that man is fit.
yeah,
And there's no reason, right? He's doing the things he's supposed to be doing, and he's having the exact same thing that my 70-something-year-old father was having,
hmm
who was not in the gym any longer, was not, eating all the things. And he said that he had somebody else that had so the one thing is there are certain things in life, health-wise, that you can't outrun.
no,
But it is very important to give your body and give yourself the best fighting chance if they
yeah,
come knocking at your door, and like you're saying, you're doing the things because, you might not be able to escape it, but you're giving your body the best chance to survive it if it
yeah,
happens. And so that's, I think, is very important, and those things make kind of like my injuries look like child's play, in comparison, but um it's reality.
yeah. It's life. Like
So
it's not just staying healthy just to do the things you love. It's staying healthy to live life and to have a long, have longevity in
yeah,
life, being able to do the things you love and being around the
absolutely.
people you love.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yes.
So, kind of on the mental side of things, you've had injuries and I've had injuries. How has those injuries played a role in your performance mentally, and how did you break through some of those barriers? Because you even though you recently had ankle surgery last year, you went through a recovery cycle, but you still go out and you still compete.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm not. I've done a little bit of competitive shooting, but like I think I did a couple majors last year, and I've got a couple on the books for this year. But um, it definitely has taken its toll, and I will say I have to give myself a pep talk because one of the biggest things is, I'm afraid of twisting my ankles again
hmm
because I wasn't doing anything outlandish. I mean, I literally was stepping over a painted line on the ground.
hmm
And so it can't get much more. So I wish there was a better story, but no. So
Yeah.
I essentially was walking and this happened. And, so anytime I go out to like a major where it's like a terrain match, I have to give myself a little pep talk
hmm
of, hey, okay, this stage, there's a lot of rocks. And so I choose my game plans different for those types of things.
hmm
And I set different goals. It's not necessarily run as fast as you can because right now I'm still trying to gain my confidence as I kind of feel like Bambi sometimes, right? Because I'm like
hmm
running very gingerly and cautiously and
You're
um I
finding your limits.
I look well, I'm trying to gain my confidence because
Yeah.
I'm afraid of doing it again. So I'm not even pushing my limits yet. Because I don't have the confidence to just like be normal, if
Right.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. Um, so my confidence was rocked. So anyway, so whenever I shoot certain matches, I watch my footing, but I set different goals, so that
hmm
I'm focusing on something different rather than the footing is secondary. I'm still safe, but then I set the goals that I feel are realistic for me to move forward so that I can begin to find those limits. When I go into the gym, one thing that I'm learning is I've really taken a step back to assess my body and how this happened. I understand how my knee happened. I mean, I fell off a bridge. Okay. That did not have anything to do with me. What we've been doing is assessing kind of what happened to allow me to have an injury of this magnitude occur with what I was doing. And we have identified weaknesses. I'm really good at heavy weights with major muscles.
Hmm.
I'm not so good at the stability, the balance, and the small things that I should be that will allow are supposed to allow people to do the heavy weights and the things that I'm doing. So I actually was becoming extremely imbalanced in one direction. So to walk into the gym is very hard because I used to squat 200 and something pounds, and now I'm walking in the gym and I have 55 pounds on the bar, and all the people at CrossFit are like, what the heck? Like she, what is she doing? And me walking into the gym is not about anybody else but me.
Hmm.
But just like anybody else, there's always that aspect of what are other people going to think? And
Yep.
so when I walk into the gym, I literally have to like set my intentions and set my goals before I step foot into the gym. And then I just focus on those, right? And I work within those parameters. Some days I can do certain things and some days I can't. I mean, the weather never bothered my knee, but the weather bothers my ankles for some reason right now. And so, if there's a lot of jumping up on the bars and things like that, or something that really bothers them, box jumps or something, I will scale down to something, but I have to give myself permission and grace to do those things. And that can sometimes be the hardest thing is not getting wrapped up in who you were, but performing as who you are. You're still that person. But
Hmm.
you have to remember that that person didn't start out lifting 225 pounds their first day. So
Yep.
you haven't lost that. The hardest thing to gain is technique,
Hmm.
right? So I keep telling myself, okay, I have the technique. I need to regain the strength and the confidence to get back there. So I still have everything I need, but right now I need to pay attention to certain things, and this is how I'm going to do it. So my goals in the gym have changed, and that's really helped mentally. But there are some days where, I just want to cry through the whole workout still, because I can't do certain things, or I'm constantly having to scale things. Like I can only run so much right now before because I can't do double unders because I can't really jump right now. And I can jump high enough for single unders, but I don't have the strength in the ankles and the calves right now again to do double unders. So I'm trying to gain that back. But like that's a goal. Once I hit that, I know that's going to be a milestone. They don't want me running over a certain amount. So I have to limit what I do and then I switch to bike. So, there are just small things that I look at and I set intentions every day for where I am and also going back to what we talked about of um listening to your body. I have to listen to my ankles. Are they really sore today? Because there are some days I get out of bed and I'm like, oh my gosh, they hurt so bad. And other days I feel like I have never had surgery. And on those days where it hurts so bad, sometimes I'm thinking maybe I'll just go to the gym and do a lot of mobility. And maybe
Hmm.
I'll just do PV. Like I did a PVC workout the other day. Everybody was doing heavy lifting and I'm in the corner trying to hide, but like I'm right there in the
Hmm.
and lifting PVC pipe. And if you've ever underestimated a PVC pipe, you're not working out correctly with it.
Well, I look at it too as like, we talk about listening to your body, and like sometimes even when you first step into the gym, you may not feel that 100% right there that you can do everything right then and there. But once you kind of get into the groove of things,
Hmm.
then you can really assess, okay, I'm doing this now, and I actually feel really good. Can I go further? And you just listening to to what's going on, you can generally surprise yourself by going even further than what you originally intended. And that happened
Yeah.
to me. I was doing a flack run the other week, and it was like at first I was like, I'm gonna do a 2 mile flack run. Half a mile into it, I was like, I may just turn around like here shortly and just get back to my truck. And then it's like, but then I went a little bit further. I was like, I'm actually starting to feel good into the groove. And so I went a little bit further, and what was supposed to be a 2 mile flack run turned into a 3 mile flack run just because it's like I gained that confidence in that workout doing stuff. And it's like, okay, like I can feel push it. I can still push this, but you have to be smart about it too.
Right. Absolutely. And I think sometimes the best way like I don't have any deadlines right now, right? Like I don't have an
Hmm.
event that I'm training for right now. So I feel like I can be a little more comfortable in how much I push myself versus for somebody who does have a deadline or a date or an event coming up. Like I
Hmm.
can see, okay, yes, I need to be at a certain point and I would be willing to push myself. But right now what I'm finding is giving myself grace and permission to just kind of be in the moment and focus on the movement rather than the weight.
Yep.
That I am unintentionally finding out what I can do,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to I am pushing myself in some areas and then I'm like, does that fit my goals right now? And when I
Hmm.
back off, I realize, hold on a second, this is actually helping me. Doing a little bit lighter weight, focusing on moving slower, more intentionally, is actually going to get me further in the end than being like, oh yeah, I'm back up to my 35-pound dumbbells, or I'm
Yep.
back up to, running my 3 miles, as opposed to my form may be awful at 3 miles versus trying to
Hmm.
scale back and focusing on that 1 mile time trial again, with good form, right? To where
Hmm.
my form's not completely broken down at the end of that 1 mile, because that's what's going to get me to a
For you.
safer 2 miles and a
Yeah.
safer 3 miles than pushing it too hard. And, but yeah, I think giving myself permission to kind of scale back and listen to what's going on. And I feel like I have a balanced program between, the like the core movement standards and the core program is kind of what I call it, which is much more like therapy, physical therapy type stuff. Um, Focusing on the small muscles, the foundation of movement really. And then I've
Hmm.
got a program for the major muscles, and then I've got my cardio program. So between the three of those, some days I pick and choose. Some days I don't do anything if I feel like I've overdone it the day before, but just giving yourself permission to kind of not go hardcore and not have to show up to everything if your body is telling you, right? Because the whole
Yeah.
reason I got injured to begin with is I wasn't listening to the warning signs of we're pretty sure I had a breakdown in some of my muscles, so I was over fatigued.
Hmm.
And yeah, so
Yeah. No, well, I think we kind of covered everything that we wanted to, but is there anything that you would like to finish us off with?
no, I would just say, injury, I hate to say it, seems to be a part of life. And if it ever happens to you, just um it's not the end of the world. For each one of my injuries has been a pivot point in my life, and what has come after the injuries has been greater than what I had before. You just need to trust, serve yourself, and do the things, take the time to do things that you wouldn't normally do to do self-development and pay attention to the small stuff because that is truly what matters.
Absolutely. Well, Tess, thank you again. I really appreciate this, and I love our conversations that we always have.
Thank you for
Um,
having me. I do too.
but until again next time, yeah, I can't wait to have another conversation. And to the listeners, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of this. And again, just remember, listen to your body and set realistic goals, and don't let injury kind of dictate what you do in the future.